On the quiet suburban streets of Amityville, New York, sits a house that has terrified the world for nearly half a century. 112, Ocean Avenue, a Dutch colonial home with slanted windows that look like eyes, staring into the night. To the neighbors, it was just another house in a peaceful community. But inside, something evil stirred. What happened in this home blurred the line between reality and nightmare, between crime and curse. This is the true story of the Amityville Horror. But before the talk of ghosts and demonic possession, there was murder. It began on the night of November 13, 1974. Ronald "Butch" DeFeo Jr., just 23 years old, walked into Henry's bar in Amityville, shouting for help. "You gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot." Police followed him to the large White House at 112, Ocean Avenue. Inside, they made a discovery that would shock the nation. One by one, they found the bodies of 6 members of the DeFeo family, his father, mother, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters, all lying face down in their beds, executed with a .35 caliber rifle. There were no signs of struggle. No one in the neighborhood heard a single gunshot. The killings were methodical, almost ritualistic. And what's stranger, the police found that each victim was shot in the same position, as if they had been paralyzed by fear, or by something unseen. DeFeo first blamed a mob hit. But within 24 hours, he confessed, saying, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop." When asked why he did it, his answer was chilling. "The voices made me do it." He claimed he heard whispers in the house for days. Voices telling him to kill his family. Whether it was madness, drugs, or something supernatural, no one could say for sure. But from that night forward, 112, Ocean Avenue would never be the same. Just over a year after the DeFeo murders, the house at 112, Ocean Avenue went back on the market. In December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, Danny, Chris, and Missy, purchased the property for $80,000. It was a deal too good to pass up. 6 bedrooms, a boathouse, a swimming pool, and a private dock on the Amityville River. But as the realtor handed over the keys, she couldn't help but whisper, "You do know what happened here, don't you?" The Lutzes did know. The murders were still the talk of Long Island. But George Lutz wasn't a superstitious man, a former Marine, a small business owner. Kathy, a devoted mother, believed that good energy could cleanse anything. So, they decided to move in. On December 18, 1975, the family arrived with a moving van and their family priest, Father Ralph Pecoraro, to bless the home. As Father Pecoraro sprinkled holy water in one of the upstairs rooms, he froze. He felt something unseen brush his shoulder, and then, a deep male voice spoke from behind him. "Get out." The priest dropped his crucifix and fled the house. Later, when the family called to thank him, the priest told them not to use that upstairs room under any circumstances. But they did. It became the sewing room, where strange cold spots and buzzing flies appeared, even in the middle of winter. In the first few days, things seemed fine. The children played by the river, and the family celebrated Christmas. But George noticed something: he could never seem to get warm. Even with the fireplace roaring, he shivered constantly. He began waking up every night at 3:15 a.m., the same time police estimated the DeFeo murders occurred. The house seemed to have a pulse of its own. Doors slammed without wind, unseen footsteps echoed across the floor, and strange green slime began oozing from keyholes and walls. The family's dog, Harry, barked furiously at the boathouse each night, pulling at his chain as if warning them of something out there, in the dark. One of the most chilling moments came when 5-year-old Missy told her mother about her new friend, a large pig with glowing red eyes named Jody. Kathy thought it was childish imagination. But one night, as she tucked Missy into bed, she saw the pig's reflection in the window, staring back at her. When she ran outside, there were cloven hoof prints in the snow, leading nowhere. The activity grew worse. The front door would blow open violently in the middle of the night, even when locked and bolted. Crucifixes hung on the walls twisted upside down. A dark odor, like sewage and decay, filled certain rooms. George became obsessed with the fireplace, chopping wood for hours, staring into the flames. Friends noticed his face growing gaunt, his temper short. He looked like a different man, pale, hollow-eyed, paranoid. Kathy began having violent nightmares about the murders. She could see the DeFeo children lying in their beds, shot where they slept. Sometimes she'd wake up screaming, claiming unseen hands had touched her. Father Pecoraro tried to visit again, but his car broke down on the way. Each time he attempted to call the Lutzes, the line filled with static, and then a deep, demonic voice saying, "You will die." Terrified, he never returned. By early January 1976, the Lutz family was unraveling. George stopped going to work. Kathy felt something watching her at all times. The children began fighting uncontrollably, their personalities changing day by day. One evening, George was in the basement when he discovered a hidden door, a small red-painted room concealed behind a shelf. Inside, it smelled of rot and blood. Their dog refused to enter. The family would later call it the Red Room. Later research revealed that the room didn't appear on the original blueprints. Objects began flying across rooms. Windows slammed down on their own. A heavy crucifix ripped itself from the wall, spinning in the air before crashing to the floor. One night, Kathy claimed she felt an invisible force lift her from the bed, throwing her against the wall. George ran to help, only to see her face aging before his eyes, wrinkles forming, hair graying, as if decades passed in seconds. Moments later, she was back to normal, screaming in terror. Another night, a dark shadow took form near the children's room, a figure with glowing eyes, taller than any human. The Lutzes realized something horrifying: whatever haunted the DeFeos was now inside their home, inside them. Desperate for answers, they reached out to paranormal investigators, including Ed and Lorraine Warren, famous for their work with demonic hauntings. When the Warrens arrived, Lorraine immediately sensed a dark, malevolent presence. She later said, "I felt something so evil, I wanted to leave immediately. It was the closest to hell I ever want to be." During their investigation, the Warrens captured temperature drops, sudden cold drafts, and photos that would become legendary, including one image showing what appears to be the ghostly face of a child peering from a doorway. But by the time the Warrens arrived, the Lutz family was already gone. On January 14, 1976, just 28 days after moving in, the Lutz family fled the house, leaving all their possessions behind. They refused to go back, even to collect their clothes. They never revealed exactly what happened that final night, only that it was so terrifying, they feared for their lives. The next morning, 112 Ocean Avenue stood silent again, its windows staring blankly over the frozen river. When the Lutz family fled 112 Ocean Avenue on that freezing January morning, they left behind everything: furniture, clothing, even the family dog's leash. Within 24 hours, the story began spreading through Amityville like wildfire. A once peaceful neighborhood became the epicenter of America's most notorious haunting. George and Kathy Lutz refused to step foot back inside. They stayed with friends for several weeks, too terrified to sleep alone. Their children had nightmares about the house, and about the red-eyed creature named Jody. When reporters asked George what happened that final night, he only said, "It was something evil. It tried to tear our family apart." Soon, news vans lined the streets of Amityville. The story of a family fleeing their possessed home just 1 year after a mass murder was irresistible to the press. Local papers ran headlines like, "Horror House on Ocean Avenue." Television crews from across the country showed up, filming the eerie facade, the infamous house with windows shaped like eyes. Some neighbors called it a hoax. Others whispered that the DeFeo spirits had never left. Inside a Long Island prison, Ronald DeFeo Jr. watched the story unfold from his cell. He claimed he had warned people that the house was cursed. Over the years, his stories changed, Sometimes he said he killed his family alone, other times he blamed demonic forces that took control of him. Whatever the truth, one fact remained: 6 people had died violently in that house, and now, another family claimed to be driven out by evil itself. In February 1976, renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren were contacted by a local news station to investigate the Lutz home. They had spent years studying hauntings and demonic cases, including the one that inspired the Conjuring films. Lorraine later described Amityville as one of the most disturbing locations she ever entered. She said, "The minute I stepped inside, I was overwhelmed. The psychic energy was so strong, it felt as if the house itself was alive, and angry." Accompanied by a CBS television crew and other psychics, the Warrens conducted a seance. Cameras recorded temperature drops, mysterious noises, and feelings of intense dread. At one point, Lorraine claimed to see shadows moving independently of light. During that investigation, a photograph was taken on infrared film by a news cameraman. In the image, a small boy appears peeking from a second-floor doorway, even though no children were in the house. To this day, believers call it the ghost of a DeFeo child. Skeptics call it a trick of light. But the image remains one of the most famous paranormal photos ever captured. Ed Warren concluded that the house had absorbed the violent energy of the murders, and that demonic forces had attached themselves to the Lutz family. He warned others never to provoke or investigate the property without protection. But as the story spread, not everyone believed. Reporters questioned inconsistencies in the Lutz family's accounts. Neighbors claimed they never saw anything strange. Police said there were no official reports of supernatural events. Still, the Lutzes passed a polygraph test. And when asked why they would lie, George simply said, "If we made it up, we'd still be living there. We lost everything." In 1977, author Jay Anson published The Amityville Horror, a true story, based on 45 hours of recorded interviews with George and Kathy Lutz. The book became a massive bestseller, blending the DeFeo murders, the Lutz haunting, and the Warrens' investigation into one chilling narrative. 2 years later, Hollywood released the Amityville Horror film, and a legend was born. The movie terrified audiences, showing bleeding walls, demonic voices, and the iconic house with windows glowing red. But as the franchise grew, so did the skepticism. Critics claimed the Lutzes fabricated the haunting with help from a creative lawyer, to profit from the DeFeo tragedy. Some even said George's financial troubles motivated the story. However, believers pointed out that the family never recanted, even under oath. Kathy Lutz took lie detector tests and passed. Their children, as adults, continued to insist that something truly evil had happened inside that house. In later interviews, their son Daniel described hearing voices and seeing furniture move on its own. He said, "I was possessed in that house. You couldn't convince me otherwise." Since the Lutzes fled, multiple families have lived at 112 Ocean Avenue without reporting any supernatural activity. The exterior has been renovated, the address changed, yet tourists still gather outside, whispering about what might have happened inside. In 2020, the house was sold again. The new owners remain private. But the legend continues, in books, movies, and documentaries. Nearly 50 years later, the Amityville Horror remains one of the most debated paranormal cases in American history. Skeptics argue it was a perfect storm of coincidence, fear, and imagination, a grieving town looking for answers, and a family under pressure turning their trauma into myth. Believers, however, point to the sheer number of witnesses, the consistency of the accounts, and the inexplicable phenomena, the voices, the photo, the timing, and the atmosphere of evil that seem to cling to the property. Whether you see it as a hoax or a haunting, one thing is certain. The story of Amityville changed the way America thinks about haunted houses. It blurred the line between true crime and the supernatural, between reality and nightmare. 112 Ocean Avenue still stands, its windows watching, waiting. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was evil. But some houses, remember.